Have you ever stood in front of a decision that rationally you knew was simple and still couldn't move? I'm not talking about something huge. Not quitting your job, not ending a relationship, not moving across the country. I'm talking about something smaller, replying to an important email, scheduling an appointment you know you need, accepting an invitation you actually wanted to say yes to, sending a message to someone, choosing between two options you were the one who put on the table, and you just froze, maybe for a few hours, maybe for a few days, maybe for weeks. And while you stayed there, stuck, a voice inside you started getting louder. Not a kind voice, not a voice trying to guide you, a voice that keeps score. It asks, why can't you just do this? It says, anyone else would have handled this already. And somewhere, deep under all of that, it whispers something quieter and heavier. There's something wrong with you, but the worst part isn't the paralysis itself. The worst part is the story you start telling about it, because while you're stuck, you're not actually doing nothing. You're busy, you're building a case against yourself, you're going over the options again and again, weighing every risk, imagining every possible outcome, replaying the mistakes that could happen, trying to predict what people will think of you depending on the choice you make. You're trying to see the future so you can make sure you don't get it wrong. That's called analysis. But when analysis never stops, when it replaces action, when it becomes the only way you know how to deal with uncertainty, that's not analysis anymore. That's anxiety wearing the mask of caution. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. My name doesn't really matter right now. What matters is this. Something in you recognized itself in the title of this video. You didn't click by accident. You didn't click out of random curiosity. You clicked because you know this kind of freeze. You live with it. You've tried to push through it with willpower. That didn't work. You've tried to motivate yourself. Maybe it lasted 2 days. You've tried to analyze it and somehow ended up even more confused. So today, we're going to do something different. Today, we're not just going to talk about what you do. We're going to look at what's underneath it. We're going to name the shadow that runs this pattern, because the shadow has a name. And once something has a name, it starts to lose some of its power. Stay with me until the end of this video, not because this will be easy, but because there's a good chance this might be the first time someone describes what's happening inside you with enough precision that you quietly think, that's it. That's exactly how it feels. And when that moment happens, something shifts. Not completely, not overnight, but something moves. And sometimes a small crack in the right wall is all it takes for the light to get in. So take a breath, no rush. We've got time. Stay with me. Before we go into the story, I need to ask you for something. I need you to slow down with me for a moment. We live in a world that rewards speed. It celebrates people who decide fast, act fast, don't hesitate. There's a whole culture built around just go do it. Done is better than perfect. Stop thinking, start acting. Maybe you've tried to adopt that mindset. Maybe you've heard that advice dozens of times. And maybe at some point you even felt guilty for not being able to just apply it. So the first thing I need to say is this. The problem was never a lack of information. You already know you need to decide. You already know staying stuck isn't helping you. You already understand, logically, that the risk of making a mistake is usually smaller than the cost of staying frozen. You know all of that. And still, the freeze keeps happening, which means the problem isn't at the level of knowledge. It's deeper than that. It lives in the layer of what happens inside you when uncertainty shows up. It lives in the layer of what you learned, long before you had the words for it, about what it means to choose wrong. That's the layer this video is working in. So slow down, make a little space. Don't come into this in fast consumption mode. Come willing to recognize something. Come willing to feel something you may have been avoiding for a long time. I'm here with you. Noah is 32. He works at a tech company, software developer, good at what he does. His co-workers respect him. His manager trusts him. When a technical problem shows up, Noah is the one people call, because Noah analyzes things well. He looks at every angle. He doesn't make impulsive decisions. At least, that's how it looks from the outside. On the inside, It's a different story. It's 6:43 on a Tuesday morning. Noah's alarm went off at 6:30. He didn't get up. He's lying there staring at the ceiling. There's that familiar feeling in his chest. Not exactly pain, not exactly anxiety. Something in between, a quiet tension that was already there before he even remembered what the day was bringing. And then the memory arrives. Renata's email. Renata is a project manager at another company. 6 days ago, she sent Noah a partnership proposal, a real one. Clear, well thought out, a freelance project on the side, something that could pay well. And it's in the area Noah actually enjoys working in. Renata is serious, competent. The project makes sense. Noah read the email the same day it arrived. Then he read it again. He opened the attached proposal, went through it carefully, made a few mental notes, closed the laptop, and didn't reply. The next morning he woke up thinking about it, opened the email again, read it again. This time he started listing reasons in his head, reasons to accept, reasons to decline. The project looked good, but what about time? He was already busy with his main job, but how busy really? Some weeks were lighter, but what if the project grew and he couldn't keep up? What if he accepted and delivered something below his usual standard? What if Renata ended up disappointed? What if it hurt his reputation? He closed the laptop again. No reply. By the third day, the project had taken on a different weight in his mind. It wasn't just about accepting or declining anymore. Now, there was a new layer. The fact that he still hadn't answered. What was Renata thinking about the silence? She was probably assuming he was disorganized or uninterested, or worse, that he was leaving her waiting on purpose, like he was too important to answer right away. Now there were two problems: the original decision and the quiet shame of having waited this long. On the fourth day, Noah started drafting a reply. 3 different versions. In the first one, he accepts warmly, enthusiastically. In the second, he declines politely. In the third, he asks for more time to think. He reads all 3. The first one feels rushed. The second feels like a mistake waiting to happen. What if he regrets saying no? The third one feels weak, like he doesn't know what he wants. He closes the draft, sends none of them. On the 5th day, he doesn't open the email at all. A day of quiet avoidance. He works, has lunch with a co-worker, watches a show that night. But the feeling is still there the whole time, like a file running in the background, quietly draining memory, present even when he's not actively thinking about it. And now it's the 6th day, Tuesday, 6:43 in the morning. Noah is lying in bed again, staring at the ceiling, and the email from Renata feels bigger. What started as a simple decision has grown into something heavy, loaded. Now it's not just about the project, it's about who he is, about whether he's the kind of person who can make decisions, about whether something in him is fundamentally broken. He picks up his phone, opens Gmail. Renata's email is still there, marked as read, still unanswered. He sets the phone back down, gets up, walks to the bathroom, brushes his teeth, staring at his reflection without really seeing himself. On the subway ride to work, 8 in the morning, crowded car, backpacks and glowing screens everywhere. Noah stands in the corner and thinks the same thing he's thought before. Today I'll reply. Today, for sure. It's not the first time he's told himself that. He gets to the office, opens his laptop. 4 meetings on the calendar, a critical bug that needs to be fixed before noon. Noah enters work mode, and in that mode, he functions well. In that mode, things are clear. There's a problem. There's a solution. There are objective measures of success. No ambiguity, no emotional risk, no unpredictable disappointment. The work happens, the morning passes, the bug gets fixed. The meetings end. Lunchtime. Noah checks his phone. A message from a friend on WhatsApp. Dinner Saturday. He reads it. Saturday. Do I have the energy? How will I feel by then? He closes the app. Doesn't reply. Another item on the invisible list. Later that afternoon, his manager stops by his desk. Quick conversation. They're opening a tech lead position. Would you be interested in applying? Noah listens. Something lights up inside him for a moment. Real interest. Maybe even excitement. But before that feeling can settle, the questions arrive. Can I actually do this? What if I accept and I'm not good enough as a lead? What if I manage people badly? What if I disappoint the team? Noah says, Let me think about it. I'll get back to you. His manager smiled. Nod. No rush. Noah returns to his desk with the quiet feeling that he just postponed something else. 6 in the evening. He closes the laptop, puts on his jacket. On the subway ride home, standing and holding the rail, his mind does something automatic. A quick mental list. Renata's email, the dinner invitation, the tech lead conversation. 3 open loops. 3 things he didn't resolve. 3 small weights that together start to feel heavy. At home, he heats up leftovers from the night before, eats in front of his laptop while a show plays. He's not really watching. His body is there. His mind is somewhere else. It drifts back to Renata's email. He opens Gmail, starts typing a reply, stops, closes it again. At 10:30 that night, Noah turns off the light and lies down. The apartment is quiet, and in that quiet, the voice that stayed silent all day starts speaking again. Why can't you just do this? 6 days for 1 email. You're going to lose the opportunity. You always do this. There's something wrong with you. Noah closes his eyes, takes a slow breath, tries to sleep, and at 6:43 the next morning, the cycle begins again. Now I need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. What's happening to Noah is not laziness. It's not a lack of commitment, it's not irresponsibility, and it's not a character flaw. It's a very specific anxiety pattern, a pattern that has a name, a structure, a way it operates. And if you don't understand how it works, you'll keep trying to solve it with the wrong tools. The pattern is called analysis paralysis with anxious avoidance. Let me translate that into real experience. When you face a decision with an uncertain outcome, especially when that outcome involves someone else's judgment, the possibility of making a public mistake, or the risk of not meeting an expectation, your nervous system reads that uncertainty as a threat, not an inconvenience, a real threat. And when the brain detects a threat, it has 3 basic responses: fight, flight, or freeze. People with this pattern usually don't fight. They don't run away. They freeze. But the freeze doesn't look like freezing. It looks like thinking. It looks like analysis. It looks like caution. It looks like being responsible. That's why it's so hard to recognize from the outside, and sometimes even from the inside. Here's the first warning sign. You analyze the same situation over and over again without arriving at anything new. You reread Renata's email 6 times. Not because new information appeared. You reread it because rereading creates the feeling that you're doing something, when in reality, you're postponing. Analysis has quietly replaced action. And here's the cruel part. The more you analyze without acting, the heavier the situation becomes. Because now, it's not just the decision, it's the time that has passed. The quiet embarrassment of the delay, the story you've started building about what that delay means. Here's the second warning sign. The decision grows far beyond its real size. Renata's email was a partnership proposal, a simple question: yes, no, maybe. But after 6 days of analysis, it becomes a character test, a measure of whether you're competent, reliable, capable of making decisions, worthy of professional partnership. The original decision gets buried under everything that was piled on top of it. This happens because anxiety doesn't operate at the level of the situation. It operates at the level of identity. The real question underneath is rarely, should I accept or decline this project? The real question becomes, am I the kind of person who deserves to accept this? Am I capable of not disappointing people? And if I fail, does that confirm what I secretly fear might be true about me? Here's the third warning sign. The paralysis spreads across different areas of life. Noah didn't freeze only with Renata's email. He froze with his friend's message. He froze during the conversation about the tech lead position. This pattern isn't situational. It's not Noah struggles with professional decisions. It's structural. The same mechanism that freezes him in front of a professional opportunity is the exact same mechanism that freezes him in front of a simple dinner invitation, because what's really at stake is not the specific decision, it's the fear of getting it wrong. and the fear of getting it wrong travels with you everywhere you go. Now comes the part I need you to feel, not just understand. You know that sensation in your chest, that quiet tension you carry when something is unresolved, that feeling like a file running in the background, draining energy, even when you're not thinking about it directly. That has a physical cost. This isn't a metaphor. Chronic alertness, the state your nervous system enters when decisions remain open and feel like unresolved threats, raises cortisol. It tightens the muscles. It disrupts sleep. It lowers your ability to concentrate, and over time it exhausts you, not dramatically, not all at once, slowly, accumulating, like a faucet that drips. Each drop seems insignificant, but the water bill at the end of the month tells the truth. And here's the worst part. The longer you avoid the decision, the more your nervous system becomes convinced that the situation really is dangerous. Because if you're avoiding it, there must be something there worth avoiding. Avoidance strengthens the sense of threat. Threat creates more avoidance. Avoidance confirms the threat. It becomes a loop, and the loop closes. The good news, and there is good news, is that loops that close can also be opened. But to open the loop, you have to understand where it started. And it didn't start with Renata's email. It didn't start in Noah's adult life. It started much earlier. There's something inside Noah he's never really named. He feels it. He notices the effects. But he's never stopped long enough to look straight at it and say, "You have a name. I know who you are." That something is the shadow, and Noah's shadow has a very specific name, the boy who learned that making mistakes is dangerous. Let me tell you how that boy was born. Noah was 8 years old. He was a dedicated student, not the most brilliant kid in class, but careful. The kind of child who would redo his homework if he thought he got something wrong. One Thursday afternoon, he came home from school with a math test in his backpack. He got a 60. His teacher had graded it with a red pen. 3 exercises circled, and at the bottom, she wrote, "Can do better." That evening, Noah sat at the kitchen table with the test in front of him, waiting. His dad got home from work around 7. Noah was sitting on the couch, holding the paper in his hands. His dad walked in, said hello, went to change clothes. When he came back into the living room, he saw Noah with the test. "How'd the test go?" Noah handed him the paper. His dad looked at it. There was a short silence, just a second, but for Noah, it felt much longer than that. Then his dad said, 60, you studied. It wasn't exactly a question. It was a statement with a question mark inside it, a quiet disappointment, an expectation that hadn't been met. Noah said yes. He had studied. His dad nodded, handed the test back and said, "Then study more next time," and walked into the kitchen. The whole conversation lasted maybe 40 seconds, but what stayed inside Noah lasted decades. Because the 8-year-old Noah didn't process that moment as, "My dad is a little disappointed with my grade and wants me to do better." The 8-year-old Noah processed it like this: "When I make mistakes, I disappoint the people I love. And when I disappoint the people I love, I lose something. Their approval, the safety of feeling accepted, the sense that I'm doing things right." And the brain of an 8-year-old does what 8-year-old brains do. It generalizes. It creates a rule that sounds something like this: if you want to be loved and approved of, don't make mistakes. And if you're not sure whether you'll fail, don't risk it. For a while, that rule actually helped Noah. It made him study harder. It made him careful, meticulous, responsible. As a kid and a teenager, that rule brought rewards. People praised how thoughtful he was, how careful he was, how he always thought things through before acting. The problem is this: rules created to survive at 8 years old were never designed to run your life at 32. Because when you're 8, the world is small. The decisions are simple. Failing a test has clear, limited consequences. But at 32, life is complicated, ambiguous, full of decisions that don't have a perfect answer, full of situations where every option carries risk. And if you're still operating with the rule of that 8-year-old boy, don't make mistakes or you'll lose approval, you'll freeze every time a decision doesn't guarantee success. That's Noah's shadow. Not weakness, not stupidity. A child who learned how to protect himself in a way that made sense back then. And now, as an adult, he's still carrying that child inside him, still following that child's rules without realizing he can choose differently. The shadow is not the enemy. The shadow is a part of you that got left behind. And here's the thing about shadows. They operate in the dark, in the absence of recognition, of naming, of light. When you don't know that the boy who learned that mistakes are dangerous lives inside you, he starts making decisions for you. He's the one who closes the email draft without sending it. He's the one who says, "Let me think about it a little more," when you've already thought enough. He's the one who turns a simple decision into something heavy and impossible. But when you look at him, when you name him, when you understand where he came from and why he behaves the way he does, he starts to lose his power, because shadows lose strength when they're seen. Now, your shadow might not have exactly the same name as Noah's. Maybe yours is a child who was humiliated for making a mistake in front of other people. Maybe it's a teenager who tried once, failed, and heard someone say, "I knew you wouldn't make it." Maybe you grew up in a home where love felt conditional, where approval came when you succeeded, and distance appeared when you didn't. The origin can be different, but the structure is the same. At some point in your life, making a mistake became linked to losing something important, and that association survived. It followed you into adulthood, quietly shaping your decisions, quietly keeping you stuck. Does any of this feel familiar? In Jungian psychology, there's a concept that can be very helpful here. Carl Jung talked about archetypes, universal patterns of human experience that live in the collective unconscious, not as mystical beings, but as psychological structures that repeat themselves across cultures, across stories, across individual lives. And among those archetypes, there's one that matters a lot for people who struggle with this kind of decision paralysis. I call it the waiting adult. The waiting adult is the part of you that already knows what needs to be done. It already has the information. It has already analyzed enough. If you stopped listening to the shadow for a moment, it would probably know the next step. But the waiting adult is still waiting, waiting for perfect conditions, waiting for certainty to appear, waiting for the risk to disappear, waiting for someone somewhere outside of you to give permission for something you could already give yourself. There's a simple image that helps explain this. Imagine you need to cross a bridge. The bridge is in good condition. You've crossed bridges like it before. There's no real sign of danger, but you're standing at the entrance looking at it, calculating. What if there's a structural problem I can't see? What if something changes when I'm halfway across? What if there's a better way to cross that I just haven't discovered yet? The waiting adult can see that the bridge is safe, but the child who learned that mistakes are dangerous is whispering something else. What if it isn't? What if you're wrong? So you stay at the entrance, waiting for certainty. But certainty doesn't come from analysis. Certainty comes from experience, and experience only appears after you start crossing. Here's another scene. You're in a meeting. Someone asks a question to the group. You know the answer, or at least you have a perspective that would help. But before you speak, your mind runs a quick internal audit. Am I completely sure? What if I'm wrong? What will people think? What if someone knows more than I do and corrects me in front of everyone? Those 3 seconds turn into 5, then 10. Someone else answers. The window closes. After the meeting, you think, I knew that. Why didn't I say anything? The waiting adult was there, ready. But the child who fears mistakes spoke first, louder, faster, more convincingly. And the work we're doing here over the next few weeks is in part the work of giving the waiting adult more space, more voice, more authority, not silencing the child. The child has good intentions. It's trying to protect you, but helping the adult recognize when that protection is costing more than it's worth. Take a look at something important. There's a very specific trap people with this pattern often fall into, and it's especially cruel because it looks like wisdom. The trap is this: using self-awareness as another form of avoidance. Let me explain. You start to understand your pattern. You read about anxiety. You watch videos like this one. Maybe you go to therapy. You learn about the boy who learned that mistakes are dangerous. You learn about the waiting adult. You learn about analysis paralysis and anxious avoidance. You become very good at describing what's happening inside you, and yet you're still stuck. Because understanding without practice doesn't change the pattern. What it changes is the story you tell about the pattern, and that has value. I'm not dismissing it. But a new story sitting next to the same old behavior can create a very sophisticated form of procrastination. Intellectual procrastination. It sounds like this. I know I'm afraid of making mistakes. I'm working on it. Meanwhile, Renata's email has been sitting there for 2 weeks. The trap is using the journey of self-knowledge as proof that you're doing something, when in reality, you're doing something about the problem instead of doing something with the problem. I'm not saying understanding doesn't matter. It matters deeply. This entire video is about understanding, but understanding is the map. It's not the walk. And at some point, you have to fold the map and start moving. There's another part of the trap, waiting until you feel ready. Here's one of the most important things you can learn about decision anxiety. The feeling of readiness does not come before action. It comes after. You won't wake up one morning thinking, today I'm ready. Today I'm not afraid. Today the uncertainty is gone and I can decide calmly. That day doesn't exist. What exists is the day you act while still afraid. And on the other side of that action, you discover something surprising. You handled it, and that discovery feeds the next action and the next one until acting starts to feel more familiar than freezing. But that takes practice. It takes repetition. It takes a protocol, and that's exactly what comes next. 30 days, not to cure anxiety, not to guarantee you'll never feel stuck again, but to build a new relationship with uncertainty, a pattern that over time can become stronger than the old one. I'm going to walk you through it week by week. Week 1. Name and observe, days 1 through 7. The goal this week is not to behave differently. The goal is precision. Every day for 7 days, set aside 10 minutes. Morning or night, it doesn't matter. During those 10 minutes, write down every decision you avoided that day. Small ones count. An unanswered message counts. A choice you postponed counts. A moment when you said, let me think about it, even though you'd already thought enough. You're not judging yourself, you're observing. Around day 5 or 6, something usually starts to appear. A pattern. Maybe you postpone more things in the morning. Maybe when you're tired. Maybe when the decision involves a certain person or a certain kind of situation. That pattern is valuable information. Along with the list, you'll practice something called emotional labeling. When you feel the freeze starting, that tension in your chest, that internal resistance, pause, then say, out loud if you can, or silently if you can't, this is anxiety. My nervous system is reading this decision as a threat. I am safe. This is discomfort, not danger. It won't erase the anxiety instantly, but it activates the reasoning part of your brain, and it creates a small space between you and the automatic reaction. That small space is where freedom lives. On day 7, write a response to this question. When I was younger, what usually happened when I made a mistake? It doesn't have to be long. A paragraph, 3 sentences, just put it into words. Because naming it is the beginning of naming the shadow. And you already know what happens when the shadow gets a name. Week 2. The 2-minute decision rule, days 8 through 14. This week, you start acting differently, gently, with structure. The main tool this week is something I call the decision window. Here's how it works. When a decision appears, any decision, you give yourself 2 minutes. 2 minutes to check one thing. Do I have enough information to decide right now? Not perfect certainty, just enough information. If the answer is yes, you decide within the next 2 minutes. Not perfectly, not with total certainty. Just enough. If the answer is no, if you truly need information you don't have, then schedule a specific time to get that information. Not, I'll check later. A real moment. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. I'll look at this. This creates 2 habits at the same time. The habit of acting when you have enough information, and the habit of being honest about when you're avoiding something. That distinction is crucial. Most people with this pattern discover something interesting. The majority of the time, they already had enough information. This week, you'll also practice something else, a controlled mistake experiment. Once a day, Make a small decision faster than your usual pattern. No endless analysis, no multiple drafts, no compulsive rereading. Then observe what happens. Most of the time, the outcome will be good enough, and each time that happens, your brain records something new. I decided quickly. Nothing terrible happened. I wasn't rejected. I didn't lose approval. That memory is the beginning of rewiring the pattern. On day 14, write about the week. What was hardest? Was there a moment when you acted differently and surprised yourself? Week 3, conversations with the shadow. Days 15 through 21. This week is the most emotionally intense. Fair warning, you're going to start speaking with the child who learned that mistakes are dangerous, not metaphorically, literally. 3 times this week, set aside 15 quiet minutes with paper and pen. Write a dialogue. You, as the adult, ask, "What are you afraid will happen if I make this decision?" Then let the child answer. If possible, write the child's response with your non-dominant hand. It sounds strange, but it often accesses a different part of the mind. The answers may surprise you. They may be simple. They may be painful. They may connect present-day situations to memories you thought were long behind you. The goal isn't to solve everything. The goal is to open communication, to show that frightened part of you that the adult is paying attention, that you hear it, that you understand it was trying to protect you, and that now you can protect yourself differently. Some people cry during this exercise. If that happens, it usually means you touch something real. Don't rush it. Let it move at its own pace. This week, you'll also begin practicing uncertainty tolerance. Once a day, do something small where you can't fully control the outcome. Send a creative message to a friend. Take a different route to work. Order something at a restaurant without reading the reviews first. Small, deliberately uncertain. Then notice something simple you survive. Week 4, integration and identity. Days 22 through 30. The final week is about identity, because behavior change without identity change rarely lasts. If you change your actions, but still see yourself as someone who struggles with decisions, the old pattern will slowly return. Identity begins with language. This week, you stop using certain sentences inside your own mind, not out loud. Internally. Stop saying, "I've always been bad at making decisions." That's the past. Not destiny. "I can't decide. Not yet in the way I was trying. I'm an anxious person." No, "I experience anxiety." Then begin replacing them with, "I'm learning to act with enough information." Not perfect certainty. "I made a mistake and survived. I learned something." My anxiety is a signal, not an order. This might sound simple, but language shapes identity, and identity shapes behavior. Between days 22 and 28, look back at your list from week 1. All the decisions you avoided. Compare it with how you're acting now. Not to judge yourself, just to notice any shift that happened, even a small one. On day 29, write a letter from the adult you are today to the 8-year-old who learned that mistakes are dangerous. Write the words that child needed to hear, and maybe still needs to hear now. On day 30, you'll do one final thing. You'll make a decision you've been postponing. Not the biggest one, just a meaningful one. Use the process you practiced. Name the discomfort. Check if you have enough information. Act with enough without waiting for perfect. And when you do, notice something subtle but important. You didn't wait to feel ready. You acted, and the readiness came afterward. That's the 30-day protocol. It's not magic, it's scaffolding. You'll still have hard days. You'll still feel the freeze sometimes, but you'll have more tools, more awareness, and most importantly, more evidence that you're capable of moving. Let's go back to Noah. It's a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after he watched a video about analysis paralysis. He's at home, 7 o'clock, laptop open. Renata's email is still there, but something has changed. A few days earlier, he finally replied. He apologized for the delay, said he'd thought about the proposal a lot, asked if they could talk through the details before giving a final answer. Renata responded kindly. They scheduled a call, but now there's a new situation. His manager sent a message. He needs an answer about the tech lead position by Friday. Noah feels the freeze starting, that familiar tension in his chest. But this time, instead of opening 10 browser tabs to search things like, should I accept a promotion if I don't feel ready? He reaches for the notebook he started using in week 1. He writes 3 lines, just 3. What I know, I have the technical skills. The team respects me. I've already helped people informally. And what I don't know, whether I'll perform perfectly as a leader from day 1. What matters, the second is not a requirement for the first. 3 lines, not a complicated plan, not a long list of pros and cons, just 3 lines that separate what he knows from what he fears. He closes the notebook, opens his email and writes, "Hi manager, after thinking it through, I'd like to move forward with the tech lead position. Thank you for the trust." He reads it once, just once. Then he sends it. For a few seconds he sits there looking at the screen, waiting for the fear, waiting for regret, waiting for some internal catastrophe that proves he made a mistake. But what comes is quiet, a slightly different kind of quiet than the anxious silence he's used to. Not empty, lighter. He closes the laptop, puts water on to heat for tea, and he thinks, without drama, without celebration, I sent it, that's it. 3 lines on paper, and 1 action on the other side. If you made it this far, I want to tell you something directly. You're not broken. The pattern you carry, this tendency to freeze when a decision appears, to analyze in circles, to wait for a certainty that never really comes, that isn't a design flaw. It's an adaptation that made sense at some point, a response built by a nervous system that was trying to protect you. But now, that protection has grown larger than the life you're trying to live, and adaptations can change. Not overnight, not without discomfort, not without slipping back sometimes, but they can change. What needs to shift isn't who you are. It's your relationship with uncertainty. It's the belief that making a mistake means losing approval, losing love, losing your worth. And it's learning that a good enough decision made with a little courage is worth more than the perfect decision that never leaves your head. There's an adult part of you that already knows this. A part that's been waiting to step in a little more often. A part that doesn't need more analysis. It just needs permission. And you can give that permission, maybe today. Maybe with something small, maybe with 3 lines on a piece of paper, if that's what it takes. If something in this video felt real to you, leave a comment and tell me which part you recognized. Not because I need engagement, but because saying out loud what you recognize in yourself is, by itself, an act of courage. And courage, like any muscle, gets stronger the more you use it. If you want to keep doing this work with me, subscribe to the channel. Every week we explore how the shadow works and how you can learn to work with it instead of against it. You're not alone in this. You never were. I'll see you in the next one.